Welcome back to the How You Breathe is How You Live podcast. If you've ever used your IQ to go into witness protection, this episode is for you. Today we're unmasking the hyper-rational shadow, the part of the psyche that replaces feeling with analysis because it's safer to be a critic than a participant. We're exploring why your CPU is running at 200% with no cooling fan, and why you treat intimacy like a tax audit. Join us as we discuss how murdering the miracle, to dissect it, is costing you your humanity, and why your breath is the one thing you can't actually your way out of. Let's get out of the bunker behind your eyeballs and back into the room. Join me with Josh and Riley.
Had I read this earlier, I would have been like, oh, I think I have something else to do today.
I desperately need to be elsewheres.
I think I caught a cold.
So let me guess. You're not emotionally unavailable. You're just rational. You value clarity, the truth. You don't get swept up in drama. You don't cry in meetings, and you don't process your feelings for 3 hours. You think clearly. You analyze. You're the one holding the flashlight while everyone else is screaming in the dark about how the flashlight makes them feel. And half the time you're looking at people wondering, is there a carbon monoxide leak in here? Why are you like this? Maybe that's just me. You want solutions. You want the math to math. And you feel safest in your head because it's the only place where the world isn't a dumpster fire of irrationality. But the question is, did you move into your head because you liked the view or because the rest of the house was on fire? When did feelings become a liability for you? I recently had a friend who wanted his girlfriend to take a job because it just made sense. All you had to do was look at the numbers, and this job made sense, and he couldn't understand her hesitation of why she didn't want to do it. He had spent 30 years in construction, and she had spent 20 years in the medical field, and this was a job in the construction world. So, to him, it was just numbers. What he didn't realize that all his feelings had already been set aside because he had 30 years of experience so that he could have that emotional safety of what he was dealing with. Her, on the other hand, did not have 30 years of experience in the construction trade. So no matter how good that looked on paper, it was still an emotional decision because she was going into the unknown. And many times when we're asking people like, this just makes sense, it makes sense because you haven't taken into account the fact that you have an unbelievable level of experience in that area that allows you to remove the emotionality from it. So a lot of times when the hyper-rational person typically shows up, the overthinker, they have an intense and active mind. They have a strong focus and the ability to concentrate for long periods. They value emotional privacy, letting few people into their deeper feelings. They have a tendency to express passion through ideas rather than through emotions. They have a preference for observing rather than participating socially. They have a high skepticism and an appetite for debate. And they have a tendency to lose track of time and deep concentration. That's how they feel about themselves. To other people, it feels like they're being cold, distant, secretive, intellectually intimidating, but internally, they're experiencing that different. The intellectual fortress. The hyper-rational isn't dumb. In fact, they're usually the person with the highest IQ and the lowest desire to ever be seen. The pattern is what happens when a kid realizes that the adults in the room are operating on pure, unadulterated nonsense. You learned early on, emotions are dangerous, but knowledge is consistent and reasonable and can be used as a weapon. You used your mind to create order in a disorderly world. You mastered everything you could find because if you can predict it, you can't be overwhelmed. You didn't become a logician because it was fun. You did it because feeling was a luxury you couldn't afford. The hyper-rational worldview often includes beliefs like, the rational mind is where it's at. Feelings are distracting and irrelevant. Most people are irrational and sloppy in their thinking. Other people's needs distract me from my work. I need to shut out intrusions. Information and insight are what matter most. My worth comes from competence and mastery. This is not just a preference for logic, it is an identity. The shadow becomes logic as a shield. You use your intellect to go into witness protection. You think you're being rational, but you're just hiding. You've replaced feelings with analysis because it's safer to be a critic than it is a participant. If you're hyper-rational, you've got an intense, twitchy mind. You're basically a CPU running at 200% with no cooling fan. That emotional privacy is you treat your feelings like your browser history, that nobody ever gets to see it. You have observer energy, that you're the person at the party standing by the chips, judging everyone's poor life choices, while technically, using air quotes again, participating. You have high skepticism. You don't have conversations, you have cross-examinations. You're the person who looks at the sunset and says, actually, and then explains the reflection of light to everybody. William Wadsworth wrote, our meddling intellect misshapes the beauty of Take two. William Wadsworth wrote, our meddling intellect misshapes the beauteous, I can say beauteous forms of things. Beauteous.
Ship it.
We would say words like beauteous in Arkansas growing up. I do remember that distinctly. Strategery and beauteous. Yes. William Wadsworth wrote, our meddling intellect misshapes the beauteous forms of things. We murder to dissect. That's the hyper-rational shadow. You're murdering the miracle just so you can feel in control of it. And if you try breath work, you start off by wondering if you're doing it right, according to some scientific model you read about on Reddit. Newsflash, your breath isn't an equation, it's a living system. And your hyper-rational mind hates that because you can't control a living system. You can only experience it. And experience requires you to actually show up and participate. And your nervous system doesn't speak English. It speaks sensation, heat, trembling, acceptance. The hyper-rational part of you hates that acceptance. Despite appearing emotionally neutral, the hyper-rational person often feels frustration with other people's emotionality, anxiety about protecting time and mental space, a sense of being different or deeply misunderstood, loneliness masked as independence, and skepticism or cynicism about human nature. The core emotion isn't about superiority. It's about vulnerability avoidance.
I think that, I think that even includes to some extent people that may not have total awareness that there are emotions outside their own. So I just wanted to add that to your list.
That the emotions they have might not be the only emotions that are taking place in the universe?
Exactly. Precisely.
That also feels like a personal attack.
There's not a story associated with you at all. Also, that question of what does it feel like to dissect a moment intellectually as opposed to just allowing an emotion to take over you, to take you over. I think we touched on that in a previous episode where we were talking about how the nervous system doesn't speak English, and so you can't rely on your brain to relax or to understand what's going on before your nervous system can relax and reset.
Yeah, you certainly can't rely on words in your analytical mind to break it down for you. That's one of the great differences between science and art, in that science, one of my great quibbles with science, and I do love science, it's a beautiful roadmap, but it's nothing more than a map. It's not reality itself. It's a map explaining reality. But the way science works is it takes things apart into their component pieces to understand them.
Right.
And there is some value to doing that. But at some point, you have to put it all back together to understand it. And science does a very poor job of that. And art does a much better job.
Yeah, absolutely.
That the number of times I have been enlightened and understood the human condition better because of a novel I was reading than any psychology textbook is amazing. The childhood origin. Have you ever met a little kid who's a little too well behaved? Like a 7-year-old who looks at you and says, the logistics of this playground are subpar. That's not a gifted kid. That's a kid who's seen some shit. If that was you, were the one who kept the peace by being the smartest person in the room, because the actual adults were busy having a who can be the most unstable contest. You learned early on that if you could just be rational enough, maybe the screaming would stop. My condolences, you were robbed of your childhood, which led to a life of disconnection and really impressive vocabulary. Most of the words you can't pronounce on a podcast you host.
Self-deprecating humor is the best kind of
He was a
humor.
good singer. He was.
Some people grow up and become artists or athletes. You grew up to become a human calculator. Why? Because numbers don't lie to you. 1 + 1 is always 2. It doesn't matter if your dad is in a bad mood or your mom forgot to pick you up from practice. The math stays the same. Now you're 40-something and you're trying to calculate your way through a first date. She's telling you about her childhood trauma and you're over there thinking, okay, if we account for the 33.3%, repeating of course, margin of error in her narrative, wait, why is she leaving? I haven't finished the spreadsheet yet. You treat intimacy like a tax audit. You're wondering why you're lonely, but you're literally trying to solve a human being like a Sudoku puzzle. It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off.
Dodgeball shout out.
We got to start making more references here.
To be fair, human beings can somewhat be solved like Sudoku puzzles, but then you get very shallow experiences where I would argue all of modern digital advertising is just that.
Yes.
Maybe not all, but
Quite a bit of it.
quite a bit of it.
Yeah.
I think it's Tristan Harris that calls it the race to the bottom of the brainstem.
Yes. And I believe that coincides with Gary Vaynerchuk's statement that marketers ruin everything.
I would not disagree with that.
That is a former quasi-marketer. Yeah. As a professional, whenever a marketer would figure something out and then would immediately brag to everybody else about how smart they were and like the technique that they used, I was mystified because if I found something that worked, there was no way I was telling you what happened because I was going to ride it until the rails fell off.
A true professional.
Yes. Like, hey, how'd you close that deal? You're not paying me enough to tell you. You're going to tell other people, and then it's going to be more difficult for me. And no, thank you. I don't need your status. Pay me. So the bunker in the brain. The hyper-rational person doesn't live in their body. They live in a bunker behind their eyeballs. You escaped upward. You're like a person who moves into the penthouse because the lobby is on fire and the elevator is broken. You look down at your emotions like they're a bunch of rioters in the street. Oh, look at that. The grief is getting rowdy again. Better send in the logic police to pepper spray it with some facts. You've got a theory for everything. You're so busy being the observer that you've forgotten you're actually in the movie. And the narcissism of efficiency. The best part is the secret superiority. You're sitting there stone-faced while your partner's crying and you're thinking, this is so inefficient. We could have solved this 3 minutes ago if you just used a flowchart. You're thinking you're level-headed, but really, you're just terrified. You've convinced yourself that being a robot is a personality. You built the most secure system in the world and now you're the only person who has the password and you forgot where you put it. And really, as a kid, you learned being wrong was a catastrophe, that you were punished for making mistakes or having feelings. If you don't stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about. That was always my favorite as a kid. Like, boy, that's going to turn this right around, isn't it? I can't even imagine how that made any sense in the 70s. If you don't stop being hungry, I won't feed you.
I got that one in the 90s, so it stuck around.
Hey, parents, don't drop that one. If you want to have any authority as a parent, that one's, even as a 5-year-old, I was like, are you a moron? Emotions were punished with a lack of logic, so your cure was to apply logic and analysis and reason to everything. Like some people put Old Bay seasoning on everything. The people who speak with emotion make zero sense. Logic offers order in a disorderly world, predictability where emotions were unsafe, praise for being smart instead of being invulnerable, and a sense of superiority instead of helplessness. So what's it costing you to stay in your head? You're not just observing, you're being intimidating. When you walk into a room, people don't feel seen, they feel evaluated. It's like being around a human performance review. People feel inadequate around you because they can tell you're busy checking their logic for errors or correcting their grammar instead of actually trying to understand them. It's not intentional, and it's probably not even conscious. You think you're just reading the room. But relationships require participation, not a seat in the jury box. The cost is that you're effectively in solitary confinement inside your own head. People know you're competent. They know you can solve problems. What they don't know is that you're tender on the inside. That's why people keep you at a distance. It's also why you're intimidating. You're intentionally or non-intentionally intimidating so that people can't hurt the tender part of you. They don't know what makes you stay up at night when the logic fails. You've traded being known for being right, and it's a bad trade. They know you're the person to call when something breaks, but they don't know you. They don't know your fear or that weird quiet ache in your chest. You're admired, maybe, but you're certainly not felt. You're like a high-end computer that nobody knows how to turn on. You're impressive as hell, but you're completely alone and probably underutilized. And that's a lonely place to live. So, when the hyper-rational stays unintegrated, it leads to relationships that stay intellectual and not emotional. You have difficulty with intimacy and vulnerability, social intimidation of less analytical people, being respected but not deeply known, and feeling unseen despite being valued. In short, you're listened to but rarely felt.
Used the term reading the room. To go back just a second, would you classify that definition for the little adult trap as reading the room, almost like hypervigilance, right?
Yeah, it's not quite the same as the hypervigilant in that they are analyzing the room to make sure they're safe and seeing where they're going to get the most benefit from it usually. They are reading the room not quite from the same point of view as somebody who's hypervigilant.
So it's hypervigilance would be more scanning for safety, and this
Yes.
is more scanning for benefit or potential outcome.
Benefit, potential outcomes, avoidance of people. They're mostly just going to look around for, man, for sure, I don't want to talk to that guy.
Where am I safe observing?
Yeah, where am I safe observing? Where's my safety spot? Where are the people who I can? Where's the other nerds?
Yeah. Keeps you from being felt.
Yeah.
As a person who's done that more than once, it's I think it feels like it's an assessment of what's the best use of my time. I'm here. I may or may not really want to be here, and maybe I'm a little uncomfortable because I don't know that many people, or maybe I know a lot of people and I know more than there have been parties where I know there are multiple people that I should go talk to, yet I'm not going to have enough time, or I don't really want to. And so the reading the room it's like an optimization problem. It's not I'm not afraid of a conversation. I'm trying to optimize for, I'm only going to be here until 9:00. So how should I allocate my time to best use that time available?
You've completely convinced me you're not a
Yeah.
hyper-rational by optimizing. Going into this with an optimization strategy of how are we going to go through this. I think you're cured.
Yeah.
I have integrated. We did it.
The look on Riley and I's face the whole time you're explaining that is like,
We all know it's true.
well, we know it's true. It's like, hey, let me explain away the thing by telling you exactly what the optimal strategy is for this person.
I'm going to justify this real quick. Hold on, let me dig this hole.
I was just trying to share how I feel, okay? It's what it feels like when I go in the room. I'm trying to optimize.
And I love you for it, because that's different from where I come. Like when I step into a room in either situation, a space where I don't know a lot of people or a space where I do know a lot of people and I may or may not be there, but there are certainly some people I want to talk to. I don't want to talk to everyone. It's just, I come at that differently. Mine has more anxiety, but you probably knew that.
Yeah, that tracks.
Back in the 90s when the Terminator first came out, when I would walk into a room, my friends would go, the scene where he walks into the bar and he scans everybody and identifies everything that's going on and then picks the target. Is that what happens in your head when you walk in a room? And I was like, how'd you do it?
You know too much.
Don't tell anybody.
Now you must be eliminated.
You must be eliminated.
I need your power.
You just traversed the wrong part of the decision tree.
So the integrated gift.
Yeah. How do we actually fix me? That's the real question.
There's no fixing. There's just integration. The crisis manager from cold to calm. When you finally stop using your brain as a penthouse bunker, you don't suddenly become some touchy-feely weirdo who cries at Kleenex commercials. You're just an adult. Before you were cold, but now you're calm. There's a difference. When the ship starts hitting the iceberg, everyone else is running around like a headless chicken. You're standing there, heart rate at a cool 60 beats per minute, looking at the map. You aren't detached, you're composed. You've gone from being the guy who ignores the fire to the guy who actually knows where the fire extinguisher is. You're the anchor. And as it turns out, people will pay a lot of money for you to be an anchor in their life. You go from skeptic to sage. You've always had a world-class BS detector. You can spot a weak argument or a logical flaw from 3 miles away. Usually you use that power to make someone feel like an idiot at a dinner party. It's great for your ego, but terrible for your social life. This is where I get that saying, the axe never remembers and the tree never forgets. That when you are the jerk at the Christmas party, you're not going to remember, but the person you are a jerk to is going to hold on to that for time and all eternity. But when you integrate, you become a discerning sage. You still see the flaws, you just don't have to use them to decapitate everyone. You can become fair. You start factoring emotions into the equation in that how is this going to land on the other person so that I can deliver it the best way possible. You realize that feelings aren't just noise, they're data. If your wife is upset because I said so isn't a logical solution, you start seeing the whole system, which seeing the system as a whole is what wisdom is, not just the parts you like. The strategic empath, that empathy is a life hack. Empathy isn't mushy, it's actually a high-level life hack. It's efficient. Think about it like a CAO. A team that feels heard is committed. A partner who feels safe doesn't start a 3-hour fight at midnight. A kid who feels understood actually listens. Quick aside about that. Every parent who I've ever heard say, my kid doesn't listen to me, I've never heard that parent listen to one thing their kid said. They expected the listening to be a one-way street. And every time I point out, when was the last time you listened to your kid? They were violently adamant that they were not going to listen to anything your child had to say. And I was like, we can go ahead and wrap this up.
It's crazy what happens when you don't see your kids as little humans. They're just tiny adults.
Yeah.
Yeah, nuts.
They're drunk midgets is what they are.
Always on the verge of crying and throwing up.
That was when my kids were young. The thing that I always said is moms are aware of their kids' hopes and dreams and greatest desires in life, and dads are vaguely aware there's a drunk midget running around the house destroying the drywall.
Why are you crying? You gonna throw up?
They do have red little noses and they wobble everywhere.
They are wobbly. That's true.
Yeah.
Those are really good troubleshooting questions, though. Why are you crying? You gonna throw up? Top tier troubleshooting question.
You've hit 2 out of 4. That's 2.
Have you pooped yourself?
Yeah.
Today. Yeah, today. I meant today.
Right now.
That's an old diaper. Good. All right. If you're truly hyper-rational and you care about the data, you should be the most empathetic person on earth just because of the ROI. You've stopped using your intellect as a wall to keep people out and start using it as a bridge to get what you want, which is a life of meaning. You're the strategic empath. You're still stoic, but the cool kind. The Marcus Aurelius kind, not the I live in my basement and judge people on Reddit kind.
I didn't know that was a branch of Stoicism.
Neckbeards do like to think they are Stoics. And I heard the term neckbeard before I had seen one in the wild. And once I saw an actual neckbeard with their fedora, I was like, holy crap.
They do exist.
That's so true. It's true, kid. It's all true. Also, it's a very unflattering look.
It is.
With breathwork, we're taking the high-performance engine in your head and plugging it into the rest of the car. We're moving from arrogance to authority, from skepticism to discernment. You don't lose your logic, you gain your humanity. And your humanity is a much brighter bridge than your intellect ever was as a fortress. So let's get out of the bunker and back into the room. So you're going to go from arrogance to authority, skepticism to discernment, detachment to perspective, coldness to composed presence.
And I just want to mention too, we haven't super known each other for a long time, Josh, but I've had similar conversations similar to this with you about just, engaging with reality in a calm way and protecting your energy, and you do provide that. It's like it's calmness and it's empathy because I feel connected to you in those moments. So obviously there is some exchange, but it's not coldness, but it's very, I don't even know how to describe it, like very, for lack of a better term, like problem solving. This is what I see, this is the issue I see, and this is something that I think might benefit you positively. And granted, not everybody is open to that kind of engagement, but I am. And so those are things that I see that, I don't know, like I said, I don't know you, but they might be signs of growth. So I just figured I'd mention it.
You might not be completely hopeless. Yeah, as Jake has said it in different contexts, what is it that Kim is the positive light facilitator and you're there for the like maximum effort version,
Yes.
or something like that?
Yeah.
I'm definitely not I'm not the person who's going to resonate with the empath, touchy-feely, no logic. I'm more beneficial to the younger version of me who doesn't know that any of these things are on the other side, which is, oh, there's a problem. Let's approach the problem. But the solution to the problem, or really the path that we're going to go down, is one where you're going to feel something and not be so married to a solution to the problem. And what you said about the integration resonates because the call it the math, the logic, the plan, strategy, whatever you want, that stuff still matters and is still very helpful, but it's almost like it's like a really wide road. And like I trust where the road is going because I've looked at the map and I'm like, all right, we're getting down that way. But now that I recognize that there's more than just the road and the destinations, I can actually enjoy the drive. I can recognize things. I can feel the road. I can listen to music and sing along, whatever your favorite metaphor is. But it's like what you described about the childhood experience doesn't necessarily resonate with me. I didn't have a super chaotic household, but, I grew up in the American public school system where being wrong is very costly. And so it wasn't necessarily adult chaos, but just through like being intelligent and capable, you can avoid a lot of shame and punishment in the public education system. So that's probably where I learned it. But then, especially as I got older, I realized that a lot of our unconscious biases or emotional tendencies they're ways that we get taken advantage of at scale. Like we were talking about marketing and advertising earlier, and there's a reason that if you pulled up your Instagram For You page and mine, they would look very similar despite us having different interests. Like sex sells and violence, like if it bleeds, it leads. There are just basic things about people that make it possible to sell a lot of things. And so whether that's predatory credit cards and interest rates or whatever cognitive biases lead people to go to a casino, even though they know they're going to lose money, those things are everywhere. And so having the protection of some sense of logic and how the world works and how like the maths is, I think, very important, but it's not all there is. And as an aside, it actually gives me a lot of hope about how AI is not going to replace all of us instantly because it's literally trained on language, which if you look at the brain, like language is the most evolved, hyper rational. It's like we put labels on all the experiences and we like to think that's all there is, the labels, when in reality, the experience itself, like feeling the art, is the whole point, not just describing the art.
A couple of things you said. I'm going to hopefully touch on two things. One, the first thing you said was like, who is the person that I can help best? And it's helpful to know that. Like I know the type of people I work with well. And, when I managed a team, when I had direct reports, it was like, this person is my direct report. I need to get someone else to be an intermediary, or I need to get them on someone else's team. There's nothing wrong with them. They're just not going to be, we're not going to work well together. And as a leader, It's my job to get them to do the best work that they can do, not to make my life as easy as it can be. And them not interacting with me would probably be better for them and better for me. And then also finding out, like, who are the clients you want to deal with? Who are the coworkers you want to deal with? That like, ultimately what I think all of this is about is like the liberty and freedom of your life. Are you doing the kind of work you want to do? Are you doing it with the kind of people you want to do it with? Are you doing it when you want to do it? And that is what I'm trying to do with my life. And I think it's a worthwhile goal for other people as well, to find out, hey, what are your gifts? What are you good at? Who are the people that you like associating with? Having said all that, there usually needs to be one person in the group who is the grit and the oyster. Like, if everybody is just a little too easygoing, you need one person that just every once in a while rubs everybody the wrong way.
What is the sandpaper that smooths you out is a phrase I've heard.
Yeah,
I'm often the sandpaper.
I am as well. But the people who are the grit and the oyster for us are the overly emotional people who make decisions that don't track. I have a feeling about this. That feeling doesn't help us at all. I'm not saying feelings can't be helpful. I'm just saying that particular feeling is not.
Yeah, Riley, just to it's the feedback is interesting and helpful because some of the advice I've given you is especially around productivity, growth, like kind of entrepreneurial stuff. And because you feel things very deeply, my framework is very logic oriented. I'm trying to blend those two things. And I have a lot of experience with the framework and like what are the milestones we need to hit in order to make compounding progress. And so I try to communicate it in a lens of, or through a lens of, what's the feeling you're trying to achieve that's going to get you further down the road, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, it does.
the thing that I asked you was, what are the things that you need to have in your life, or what are the things that an entrepreneur needs to be successful? And think about it like building a container for any entrepreneur. And then it just so happens that you're the entrepreneur in that container. And then what would that feel like? And so it's both, you have to build the house and live in it. And if you don't have a tape measure and nothing's at a right angle, you're not going to build a house that's going to stay. The house will fall down if you can't measure anything precisely and you can't build right angles. But at the same time, if you can't build a home that feels like it's worth living in, what's the point of all these precise measurements? And so I kind of come at my advice to you like, I know how to get this house together, but you have to live in it. And
Yeah.
so it's like, how do I encourage you to get the walls to be straight?
Well, this is the balance between order and chaos. That if you go into the kitchen and every pot is dirty and the sink is full, you can't make anything. And if you go into the kitchen and it looks like it's a German laboratory and everything is exactly where it should be and there is nothing out of place, you're afraid to touch anything and create.
Kim may know this already, but if she doesn't, I hope she's listening, or you can tell her. When you put out a cheese and charcuterie plate, you're supposed to cut into things so that people aren't afraid to mess it up.
Because there's not always a Josh and Jake there who are just
like, ooh, food.
who are going to Garfield onto that thing and just. So those guys didn't even use the cheese knife. They just fingers and teeth. Are there teeth marks in this blue cheese?
That's what we got hands for. Jake and I are just trying not to bite each other while we're diving into that
Person
thing.
ate a block of cheese like it was an apple.
I think that's why you guys sit across from each other, not next to each other.
That's why I made the spinning
Space.
ceremony
Charcuterie board.
Susan.
Ceremony Susan.
So Jake and I don't have to fight it out.
Surprisingly, clarity doesn't come from thinking harder. Your body isn't just a meat vehicle designed to carry your brain from one meeting to the next. Breath work isn't anti-logic, it's pre-logic. It's working on the basement level of your hardware system, the nervous system, before your brain ever has a chance to do its little commentary. So when we're talking about breath work for the hyper-rational, what you're actually hiding, your hyper-rationality isn't a personality, it's a security detail. At some point in life, Life got chaotic or loud, and your mind stepped in like a bouncer and said, I'll handle this. And it created distance. It created analysis. And it worked. But you never actually processed the original stress. You just archived it. So now your body is permanently braced for impact. You got a jawline like a vice grip and a subtle, that's not even a hard word. Subtle, let that be silent. Subtle hypervigilant that makes you about as relaxed as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. Your mind is managing, but your body is still waiting for the other shoe to drop. So we do conscious connected breathing. No pauses, no gaps between the breath. You just smoothly move from one inhale to the exhale without a pause in between it. You're not optimizing your breath because that continuous rhythm is a tactical strike on your prefrontal cortex. It softens the default mode network, the part of your brain that won't shut up about your to-do list. It shifts you from thinking about an experience to actually experiencing the experience. And for you, this might be a little unsettling at first because you can't solve the breath. You can't debate it. You can't actually your way out of it. You just have to feel it. It's a firmware update for your soul. It allows you to do a somatic reframe that feelings are just data. You think emotions are inefficient, and I'm telling you that they're events in your body. They're like the ringing of a chime. They peak, they move, and they resolve. The kid inside of you who thought, if I feel this way forever, I'll drown, finally realizes, oh, I can feel this, and I'm still standing, and will eventually pass. That's not being emotional, it's being intact. So an intention for the logic first crowd. Intentions are, when we set intentions in our breath work, one of the things that we're setting intentions for is how do I want to feel? How do I want to be? How do I want to show up in my life? When I set a daily intention, my daily intention basically is, how do I want to feel at the end of the day? And how is it that I'm going to have to show up in my daily life so that I can feel that way at the end of the day? So some of the intentions that you can use are, I'm grateful that I trust my body as much as my mind. I'm grateful that I can feel without losing my edge. I'm grateful that I experience life, not just analyze it. And they're not just affirmations. They're requests to your biology to update the firmware. So you can't think your way through this. Trying to think your way out of hyper-rationality is not going to work. Because of this, talk therapy is great, but the hyper-rational person, it's just another intellectual exercise. And with journaling, you'll just end up writing a dissertation about your trauma or whatever the hardships were. Insight is just ego fuel. It doesn't move the needle in your body. Conscious breathing gently exhausts your analytical grip. And when that grip softens, the system recalibrates. You learn that you can stay present without having to solve anything. And when you go back to your logic afterwards, it's cleaner. It's more humane. You don't lose your edge, you just gain depth. And the bottom line is this isn't an invitation to stop thinking. That's virtually impossible. The invitation is to let your body have a voice. When logic and sensation finally start working together, you don't become less intelligent, you become wise. And wisdom is just what happens when your mind finally realizes your breath is the one actually running the show. So you want to keep analyzing the menu, or are you ready to eat?
Can we reframe the intention, how can I feel without losing my edge? What's the positive, without losing my edge, what's the positive, what's the word you use for, it's like positive?
Positive present tense.
Positive present tense, yeah. What's the positive present?
While maintaining my edge?
I would say I'm grateful that I can feel and maintain my boundaries.
That doesn't feel right. There's something...
I'm grateful that I can feel. I'm grateful that I can feel so that I can perform at a higher level. That's really what the edge is about, is like your edge is how you are performing.
Yeah, there's this sharpness to the edge. And my experience of the last 5 years, I guess, has been the more I do these things, and these things being breathwork and integration, and the space between the sharp edges gets bigger, and there's more room for resolution and feeling. So it's not that I'm feeling while maintaining that edge or while preserving performance. It's like creating space.
It sounds like what you're trying to get to is the difference between reacting and responding, the difference between the event and the response. That when you react, something happens and it's immediate, it's deep wired into your system. It is almost a nervous system response in that you react to it. And when you respond, there's an impulse and then there's a gap. And then in that gap, you can decide how you're going to respond.
There's truth to that, but I guess an example of what I'm thinking of is doing a snatch in the gym. Like, that's a thing that I benefited highly from being very analytical and very precise, and like thinking hard about it and practicing it over and over. And then eventually I asked myself the question, can I do this same thing but with grace and with a certain ease to it? And I can generally move the same weight and make it look the same, but the feeling is very, very different. And so while the movement pattern is effectively the same, my experience of it is completely different because I allow myself to feel the smoothness of the technical precision. And math and coding are similar, where you can write the proof, you can do the computation, you can execute, but the flow, the elegance of the solution, the way you put it together, when you do it with more feeling and intuition, you still, again, it's like the house metaphor, like it's still got to not fall down. But once you've mastered the skill of assembling the thing, which requires a certain level of hyper rationalism to learn, there's now this artistry and this craftsmanship that you can bring. And what it feels like to me is space in between. Like, I'm not only focused on the studs are 16 inches apart. It's like, all right, how am I going to put this wall up to create space for someone to play music or to cook dinner in this room or whatever it is? Like, I have more room to feel in between the lines rather than hyper rationally obsessing over where the lines are.
Yeah, I would say that you can be rational without being hyper rational. That's
fair.
And I think one of the things that you're getting to there is, if we had taken Josh 7 years ago and said, hey, let's set an intention to reduce your edge, you would have had a lot of resistance to that. And that Josh 7 years later is, hey, maybe we can reduce the edge a little bit. And it's like, all right, if this is their first step, if this is their first foray into breath work and intentions, let's not try and take their edge away from them just quite yet. Maybe give them a couple of years. Let them baby step into it before we yank the carpet out from under them and turn them into a patchouli wearing hippie.
It's noteworthy too.
By the way, I hate patchouli. If anybody do not wear patchouli,
terrible.
Yes.
I have a friend who you know, and you'll know who I'm referring to as soon as I start telling this story. I've known him since long before I started this journey, and we were intellectually competitive. And I see old me in him all the time when he gets intimidated, and it sucks to realize how intellectually forceful I was on people, not even unintentionally, but completely unaware. And I'd get feedback like, you're really smart, but you're a lot. And I was like, what do you mean, but? Those both sound like good things.
I think my first professional review said, is a one-man army. And I thought that was a positive. Apparently it was not.
All sounds like green lights to me, boss.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just, I guess the message, and it's valuable for my journey and thinking about who can I help and how, because it's still really difficult to figure out how I would even speak to myself 7 years ago. But I guess being a little bit on the other side, it's, oh man,
I think one of the things that helped me a lot was, a lot of times other people are thinking like, oh, you're understanding this human experience. And it's like, I had no idea how what I was doing was landing on other people. And somebody basically had to sit it down, break down for me and go, hey, the reason you're having so many complications with the other departments in the company is because they think you're a jerk and you're really hard on them and they don't want to do anything extra to work with you. So they're going to follow everything to the letter of the law. And that's not going to be helpful for you long term. Maybe you should back off a little bit. I was like, I don't want to back off, but that actually makes sense.
I can't get around the logic of that,
You're
but
right.
I don't want to do
I
it.
don't want to. I want to still push the accelerator all the way to the floor. And how dare you tell me to ease up?
To bring it to breath work, I guess I've had an experience of change, but it's really difficult to look back and articulate. So for the fellow hyper-rational rationalizer, wait, what is it? Hyper-rational?
Hyper-rationalers?
Hyper-rationalers? For those of you who identify with this shadow, for the nerds.
For the overthinkers.
What?
For the grammar Nazis.
I guess, I mean, you said intentions, but what are we looking for in breath work for the hyper-rational person who is probably extra skeptical and critical of this woo-woo, I'm going to lay down for 2 hours and breathe and I can't look at my phone. This is stupid. Why are you telling me to feel things when I can think my way out of any situation? What's the sales pitch?
I'm laughing at I can think my way out of any situation. It's, yeah, you managed to think your way out of 2 or 3 marriages, didn't you?
Ouch.
And I'm not aiming that at anybody directly. I'm just saying if you listen to this episode Identified and I said that, you probably went, oh, you son of a... So...
Who looked at my browsing history?
Yeah, that's not true. You can't think your way out of any situation that it is in the long term, it is going to cause problems. And I would say what you're going to get from it is that you will get in touch with your body, which will get you in touch with your intention, which gets you in touch with your subconscious, which is 11 million to 1 more times more powerful than your analytical mind. That your analytical mind is processing, I believe it's about 130 bits of information per second. Your subconscious mind is processing about 11 million bits per second. It's not close. And in order for your subconscious to speak to you, it can only do that through your body. That all senses of intuition are some physical sensation. Hey, I've got a gut feel about this. Hey, my throat's tight. This gives me the willies. Some people hear things, some people see things, but it is always a sensory experience, not a thought.
And in my experience, the thoughts just shut the sensory experiences down.
Correct. That your subconscious is there to get you into the right ballpark, and your analytical mind is to get you on the right base. If you've not listened to your subconscious mind, your analytical mind getting you on the right base in the wrong field doesn't help. Hey, I got on first base. Bro, this isn't even where your game's being played, man.
You're on the wrong planet.
You are on the wrong, you're not even in the right zip code. Being right in specificity and wrong in the general plan, I would say, is the big thing. And what it's going to give them is they'll be able to relax. They'll be content.
That's often the thing that I lead with people that I feel are like me, who are skeptical. I'm like, bro, worst case, you lay down and listen to music for 2 hours without your phone. How bad can that be?
Right.
Take a nap if you want to, but just relax.
All right, we're going to move on to the weekly integration guide, or how you can stop being a human CCTV camera. From analysis to embodiment. You just finished a breathwork session. You probably felt some things that didn't fit into a tidy little box, or maybe you spent the whole hour trying to figure out the breathing technique. Either way, that's fine. Integration for someone like you isn't about some spiritual breakthrough. It's about practicing participation. This week, your job is to stop observing your life like a documentary narrator and actually start being fully engaged with it. I dropped in an actually there.
Nerd.
Actually. Yeah.
Very brief aside, in grad school, there was this guy who literally everyone called him actually behind his back. He met a woman who grew up in a village at the base of this mountain in South America. And she was like, oh, I'm from, and she said the name of the mountain. And he was like, actually, it's pronounced, and everyone was like, did you seriously just actually the person who grew up in the village at the base of the mountain He had no idea.
That is
Oh,
Yeah.
that,
World class.
that is sitcom level lack of self-awareness. Yeah, I'd pulled up the phone and was like, hey, could you reenact? I'm going to need this for later. All right, practice 1, the 90-second rule, the shut up and sit there practice. Once a day, when you feel something inefficient, like irritation, awkwardness, or that low-level frustration when someone is being low IQ challenging, do not explain, justify, or narrate it. Set a timer for 90 seconds and just feel the physical sensation. Where's it at in your body? For me, it's in my solar plexus, but it could be in your jaw, your throat, it could be in your shoulders. Stay with the hardware, the sensation in your body, not the software, the story that you're telling yourself about that. You're retraining your brain to realize that a feeling is just a biological event, not a 5-alarm fire that needs an immediate board meeting. Activity 2, one conversation without fixing. This is the actually detox. Pick one conversation this week where you don't optimize anything. Don't correct their facts. Don't give advice. Don't say actually. I know that might be physically painful to avoid saying. Just reflect back what you hear. That sounds heavy, or I see why that would hurt, or I could see why you would feel that way. Notice that twitch in your brain that wants to refine their logic and let it go. You're discovering a radical concept. Connection is not a problem to solve. It's just a connection, a contact point for energy to flow and be exchanged. Activity 3, replace why with what. Your mind loves why because it's a rabbit hole that leads back to more thinking. Why do I feel this? Why is this guy so difficult? This week, shift to what? What am I feeling right now? What is happening in my body? Why lives in the penthouse bunker? What lives in the body? Hang out in the lobby for once. Also, as an aside for me, there are no why questions in science. There's only for what cause. In science, you literally can't ask a why question. You can only ask what questions. And also, science does a terrible job of answering for what cause questions.
That's part of what makes it science, I feel like.
Yeah. Activity number 4, scheduled non-optimization time. Block 20 minutes where you do absolutely nothing productive. Walk outside without a podcast and without listening to music. Sit outside without a book. Move your body without tracking it on your watch. It's not lazy. It's a system recalibration. If you can't go 20 minutes without input, your CPU is overheating. Give it a rest. It might even be just sharpening the saw so that you're sharper later. Activity number 5, micro vulnerability, the risk of being known. Share one feeling this week without a PowerPoint presentation to justify it. Instead of, I'm stressed because the vendor's timeline is suboptimal, try, I'm overwhelmed. Short, unpolished, no data to back it up. You grow when you risk being known without being impressive. 6, the end of the week audit. At the end of the week, look at the data. When did I analyze instead of feel? What happened to my body when I didn't try to fix my partner? The big question, what did I learn about safety this week? You're trying to update the old survival code. You're learning that vulnerability isn't a surrender, it's just acceptance. You're not becoming less sharp. You're becoming multidimensional. Your edge stays, your clarity stays, your discernment, but now you add depth, warmth, and presence. The goal isn't to stop being the smartest person in the room. The goal is to be a grounded and to be the true authority. Also, there is an integration guide to go with this week's episode of the podcast. So wherever you're listening to your podcast, there will be a link there. You can click on that and get sent all of these activities to you in your email inbox.
That's rad.
Intellectualization is not failure. It is intelligence applied to the wrong domain. You've developed it because it works. It kept you safe. It gave you mastery and identity. The invitation is to reunite the mind and the body because the life is not an equation to solve. It's a living system to experience. William Wordsworth captured the shadow of hyper-rationality in the poem The Tables Turned. Sweet is the lore which nature brings. Our meddling intellect misshapes the beauteous form of things. We murder to dissect. Enough of science and of art. Close up those barren leaves. Come forth and bring with you a heart that watches and receives. The devastating line, we murder to dissect. We take something alive, love, grief, breath, mystery, and we reduce it to data. We dissect the miracle until it's no longer miraculous. We trade consciousness for analysis. We believe that if we can name a thing, we can control it. But the nervous system doesn't speak words. It speaks sensation, warmth, pressure, tingling, tightness, release. In the poem, Wordsworth urges us to quit your books and close up those barren leaves. Not because learning is bad, but because there's a kind of knowledge that only comes through direct experience. Gnosis over episteme. Direct knowledge over information. Participation over observation. Wholeness over dissecting. That's the move. In breathwork, the hyper-rational often sits there wondering, am I doing it right? Is this parasympathetic activation? Is this trauma release or just CO2 shifts? But something extraordinary happens. You discover that feeling doesn't overwhelm you. It completes itself. You discover that acceptance doesn't erase your intelligence. It deepens it. So this week, fire your inner analyst just for a few minutes a day. Your life isn't a spreadsheet. It's a thesis or an equation. It's a woodland bird. It's wild. It's alive. It's unpredictable. Close the books. Stop the toil and trouble. Come forth into the light of your own body, because how you breathe is how you live. Experience your next breath.